After handing them an envelope of money to help with bills, my daughter-in-law sneered and said, "We don't want your charity. Take your money and go." My son just stood there, his eyes avoiding mine as I clutched the envelope and turned away. I raised Aaron on my own more than I care to admit. My husband, Dan, was a good provider but a cold man. He believed emotions were weakness. I learned early on not to expect warmth from him, and when Aaron came along, I promised myself I'd give that boy every ounce of love I had in me. Maybe too much. He was a quiet kid, smart, sensitive. He liked reading, drawing, and staying close to home. I worked long shifts but made sure I was always there for him. I made his lunches, went to every school concert, sat in the front row of every game, even when he barely played. When he wanted to go to a college in Seattle, I swallowed my worry and told him to go. I picked up an overnight cleaning job for 2 years to help with the tuition gap, just so he wouldn't have to take out more loans. So yeah, maybe I spoiled him a little. Maybe I didn't teach him how to stand up for himself because I was too busy standing up for him. That's on me. When he met Rachel, he brought her home for Thanksgiving. She was polite, put together, pretty in that Instagram way. Perfect teeth, smooth hair, soft voice. She called me ma'am the first few times, and I asked her to stop. She laughed and said, "You're just so traditional." That should have been a sign. Over the next year, things changed fast. They got married in a courthouse ceremony I wasn't invited to. Aaron said it was just easier that way. They told me later over dinner. I smiled and said I was happy for them. Elite. They moved into a condo I helped them find. I even went with them to see it, gave them money for the down payment, $5,000, which they promised to pay back. They never did. I never pushed. When Rachel got pregnant, I knitted the entire nursery set by hand. I offered to help with anything they needed, and at first they let me, but once the baby was born, Rachel started acting different. She'd give me these looks, like I was overstepping, like I was some nosy old woman who didn't know how to mind her place. One time, when the baby was crying and I suggested trying a warm bottle before burping him, she cut me off mid-sentence and said, "We're following our pediatrician's advice. We don't need outdated tips." I let it slide. I wanted peace. I wanted to be close to my grandson. So I smiled and said okay, and quietly left after helping clean up dinner. Over time, I saw Aaron less. Phone calls became texts. Texts became silence. When I asked if everything was okay, he always said, "We're just busy, Mom." Then that call came. He sounded tired, almost ashamed. He said, "We're struggling, Mom. Rachel's not working as much, and daycare is draining us. We're behind on bills." I told him not to worry, that I'd help. He said, "You don't have to," but I could hear the relief in his voice. I went to the bank the next morning. I took out $2,000 in hundreds. That money was part of what I'd saved for emergencies. And maybe this counted. I put it in a plain envelope, no note, no message. Just help. That's all I meant it to be. When I showed up that Saturday, I could already tell something was off. Rachel opened the door like she hadn't expected me, even though Aaron had said it was fine. She had that look again, the one that made me feel like a stranger. I handed her the envelope and said softly, "This should help for now. No strings, just love." She looked down at it like I'd just handed her trash. Then she said, with this sneer I will never forget, "We don't want your charity. Take your money and go." It was like getting slapped. Aaron was behind her, holding the baby. I looked at him, waiting, begging, maybe, for him to say something. To step in. To tell her she was out of line. He didn't. He just looked down, rocking the baby gently, like he was somewhere else entirely. I stood there, envelope still in my hand, my chest burning. Then I turned and left. I didn't look back. When I got home, I didn't cry. I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of me. I ran my fingers over it again and again. My hands were shaking. I thought about every birthday party I'd planned, every late-night pickup from school, every dime I'd given without a word of expectation. I thought about the way Rachel looked at me like I was nothing. And I thought about the way my own son didn't defend me, didn't even look me in the eye. Something hardened in me that night. I'd spent decades putting others first.
Giving.
Bending. Smiling through insults. But not anymore. They didn't want my money? Fine. Let's see how they do when the flow stops and when the truth starts coming out. Because I've got more than just money. I've got records, receipts, and a hell of a long memory. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't call Aaron.
He didn't call me.
I didn't go to their condo. I didn't drop off baby clothes or homemade soup. I didn't send messages or ask for photos of Caleb. I didn't even check their social media, though God knows I wanted to. But silence has its own weight. You start to feel it pressing on your chest. I thought maybe, just maybe, Aaron would come to his senses. Apologize. Explain. Do something. Instead, Rachel did. 3 weeks after the envelope incident, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter, typed and signed. It was a legal notice. Rachel had retained an attorney and was formally requesting that I cease unsolicited contact and appearances at their residence. She claimed I had made unsolicited financial offers that created emotional distress and that I had shown a pattern of interference with parenting methods. Interference? I read the words 3 times. My hands went numb. They were building a paper trail, trying to frame me like some unstable grandmother who couldn't keep her boundaries. Like I was dangerous. I wasn't dumb. I knew what this was. They were cutting me off on purpose. Laying groundwork in case I ever tried to seek visitation rights or make a claim on their time or money. I kept the letter. I filed it, and I got smart. I went into my little home office and opened the old fireproof safe I'd kept since Dan died. Inside were 30 years' worth of documents. I dug out the folder labeled Aaron. It had copies of the college tuition payments I'd made directly to the university, the $5,000 cashier's check I'd written for the condo, a signed IOU from Aaron for $2,500 when his car broke down in 2017. I wasn't thinking of suing him. That wasn't the point. But I needed proof. I needed to remind myself I wasn't crazy, that I had given again and again and been repaid with silence and contempt. I also started writing down every interaction I'd ever had with Rachel that raised red flags, times she dismissed me, snubbed me, talked down to me in front of Aaron. It added up, a pattern of control, of isolation. She wanted me out of their lives, and Aaron was letting her do it. Or maybe she didn't have to try very hard. Maybe he wanted me gone too. One afternoon in April, I ran into Aaron at the grocery store. I hadn't seen him since that day on their doorstep. He looked tired, unshaven, like fatherhood hadn't been kind to him. We almost walked past each other, but I stopped. He froze when he saw me. "Aaron," I said. He gave a weak smile. "Hey, Mom." We stood there in front of the dairy case like strangers. I said, "Why did you let her send me that letter?" He looked down. "It wasn't like that." Then what was it like? She felt like things were getting too tense. She wanted some space. "And you agreed." He sighed. "I didn't want things to get worse." "They got worse the moment you stopped standing up for me." He didn't say anything. Then I said something I never thought I'd say. "I'm changing my will." His eyes snapped up. "Not out of spite," I said. "Out of clarity. I need to put my trust in people who've earned it." He looked like he wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. I walked away. After that, things started to shift again. I got a call from Rachel's mother, Ellen, out of nowhere. She wanted to clear the air. She said Rachel had been under stress and misunderstood my intentions. She even hinted that maybe we could move forward. I wasn't buying it. A week later, I heard from a friend at church, someone who worked at the same dentist's office as Rachel, that Rachel had been bragging about how she finally got that old woman off their backs. Said she and Aaron were going to refinance the condo now that they didn't owe anyone anything. That's when I decided, if they wanted me gone, I'd give them exactly what they asked for. But not the way they expected. I met with an estate attorney. I restructured my will. I set up a living trust. Not for Aaron, but for my grandson Caleb, with very specific terms. Caleb could access the money only if certain conditions were met, including proof of ongoing contact and a healthy relationship with me. Otherwise, the money would go to a children's literacy charity in Spokane. I also began documenting everything. Every payment, every phone bill I covered, every message ignored. And then I made a quiet call to a tax accountant. See, gifts over $15,000 in a year? They're reportable. And Rachel had taken thousands, some directly, some through Aaron. All unreported. All traceable. I wasn't planning to report them yet, but I was preparing. They thought I was weak. Just an old woman with a wounded heart. But I'm not done. I'm just getting started. About a month after I had that cold grocery store exchange with Aaron, I got a voicemail from a name I hadn't heard in years. Hi, Mary, this is Carla Benson. I'm not sure if you remember me. I used to work with Rachel at the dental office. I know this might be strange, but I think you need to know something. Call me back when you can. I sat with that message for an hour before I called back. Carla had always been friendly, maybe in her early 40s, and I remembered she quit the dental office not long after Rachel went part-time. When I finally got her on the phone, her voice was hushed, nervous, like she was checking over her shoulder. I don't want to cause trouble, she said. But I think you deserve to know the truth. Rachel didn't cut her hours at the dental office because of the baby. She got fired. What? I asked, confused. Insurance fraud. She was upcoding procedures and filing claims for work that was never done. Small amounts, but enough that the dentist didn't want to deal with it quietly. They let her go and said they wouldn't press charges if she signed an NDA and disappeared. I was stunned. She told Aaron she left to be home with the baby? I asked. Carla gave a sad little laugh. Of course. And he believed her. But I know for a fact he never saw the paperwork. She hid it. That changed everything. I thanked Carla and hung up, my mind racing. Rachel had lied to Aaron, covered up a firing for insurance fraud. She'd been living in my son's house, spending my money, pretending to be above my help, and she was a liability. And suddenly, her sneering words, "We don't want your charity," took on a whole new meaning. She didn't want my charity because she was trying to erase her own shame. She couldn't stand being reminded that I saw through her. The next twist came from someone even closer to home. My neighbor and friend, Denise, who's known Aaron since he was 12, mentioned she saw Rachel at the courthouse downtown. She didn't think much of it until she overheard part of a conversation Rachel had in the hallway with a man who wasn't Aaron. She said something about needing a clean start and how he'd never leave her unless she forced it. Denise told me. The guy kissed her hand before they walked out together. I felt my stomach turn. I wanted to believe it was innocent, but Rachel wasn't the type to flirt casually, especially not in public. Not unless there was something brewing. So I started digging. I hired a private investigator. Not something I'd ever imagined myself doing. Felt like something out of a movie. But I found a small firm, local, discreet, and explained what I needed. I wanted facts, not gossip. Hard proof. 3 weeks later, I had it. Photos, receipts, time-stamped logs. Rachel had been seeing a man named Todd, the regional sales rep for a medical supply company. They'd been meeting in hotel rooms, at coffee shops far from home, even during the times she claimed she was with Caleb at daycare or running errands. The PI said it had been going on for at least a year. I remember sitting on the couch with that envelope of evidence in my lap, heart pounding. I thought about Aaron holding the baby that day, how he didn't look up, how he protected her silence instead of confronting the truth. And now here he was being lied to, cheated on, and probably still believing it was me who was the problem. That's when it clicked for me. I wasn't just dealing with ingratitude anymore. I was watching my son's life collapse in slow motion, and he didn't even see it coming. And whether he liked it or not, I wasn't going to sit by and let that woman destroy him completely. But I wasn't going to knock on his door and tell him.
No.
That's what they'd expect. A messy, emotional scene. I had a different plan. One that would show them both exactly who I am and why you don't treat someone like they're disposable. I spent the next few weeks preparing everything. Every step had to be deliberate.
No drama, no screaming matches, no tirfel confrontations.
Rachel thrived on emotional chaos. I wasn't giving her that. I wanted her to fall hard and silently, with no one to blame but herself. First, I made copies of the PI report. One went into my lawyer's hands. The other, I sealed in a large envelope and mailed, anonymously, to Aaron's office. I knew he'd open it alone there. He'd see the time-stamped photos, the hotel receipts, the texts between Rachel and Todd. He'd read the part where Rachel said she was so close to being done with the baby phase and how she couldn't wait to travel without dragging around her mother-in-law's guilt. I didn't need to say a word. The truth would speak loud enough. Next, I filed a quiet, formal complaint with the Washington State Insurance Commissioner. Carla had given me enough information to verify Rachel's fraud at the dental office. I included dates, her position, and the nature of the claims. I didn't need revenge through the courts, but a little scrutiny from the state would follow her around like a shadow. Then I revised the trust one more time. I had my attorney draft a conditional clause. Caleb's access to his education fund would depend on annual proof of a stable environment, verified independently, not by his parents. Any sign of criminal charges, civil fraud, or instability. The funds would be locked until he turned 25. But the most cutting part? Aaron wasn't just removed as executor of my estate. He was removed entirely. I named Denise, my neighbor and longtime friend, as my power of attorney. I'd helped raise her son when she had cancer in the 90s. She never forgot that. She knew how to keep things locked down. Then I waited. 3 weeks later, Aaron showed up at my door. His face was pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't knock at first, just stood there, his hand hovering.
When I opened it, he didn't speak.
He just held out the envelope with the PI report, the same one I mailed to him. "I'm sorry," he said, finally, voice raw. I let him in. We sat in silence for a while. Then he told me everything. How he confronted Rachel. How she denied it, then broke down. How she admitted she hadn't loved him for over a year, but didn't want to start over broke. How she threatened to take Caleb and move across the country if he tried anything. I nodded.
She used you.
Both of you. He wiped his face. I let her. I let her do it to you too. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I let the guilt sit. He asked if I could ever forgive him. I told him forgiveness is earned, not begged for. A week later, Rachel was gone. Moved out. Took half the furniture and drained their joint savings. Aaron filed for divorce. I didn't push him toward it. He did it on his own. Maybe that was the first adult decision he'd made in years. The last time I saw Rachel, she was standing in a courthouse hallway, holding a manila folder, looking like a ghost. She glanced at me, but didn't say a word. She knew. She'd lost. Quietly, completely. Aaron's rebuilding now. It's not easy. We're talking again, slowly. I babysit Caleb a couple days a week.
He's a sweet boy.
Smiles a lot. Looks at me like I'm his whole world. And sometimes, late at night, I sit with that envelope of money I never gave away. It's still in my drawer. A reminder that love isn't weakness. And giving doesn't mean being used. I gave them everything. But I took back my power. Every single piece of it.